Any little button coming up?
It says starting.
Oh, it says start recording. Okay.
There we go.
Oh,
Hey,
now you popped up. Oh, that's so funny. Sorry, you just popped up funny on the side of my screen. I gotta send you that picture.
Okay. Well, that is in the way now. What's up, everybody? We're back on the Rising Star Podcast. This is episode number 2. Joining us today, with me and Kelsey, of course, we've got the Vince McMahon of Invictus Pro Wrestling. Although he's not very angry, you know.
And you don't do the walk.
He
One day you should just come down and do the walk.
And I don't wear big stupid ties where the knot is a different color than the rest of the tie. You ever notice that about Vince? That probably
No,
now
I need to go and like watch something where he's in.
Watch any interview with him. He wears these weird ties where the knot is a different color from the rest of the tie for some reason. I'm like,
I need to go and like find that.
But ladies and gentlemen, we got the one and only Alex Accetta, or Accetta. Did I say that correct? I swear to God, I never say that.
Yeah.
I swear I've been talking with you, Alex, for like 2 years now, and I never say it correctly, do I?
That's fine.
It's okay. Everyone thinks my last name is Spears, so.
Island anyway. Yeah.
But joining me and Kelsey, of course, Alex Accetta from Invictus Pro Wrestling. Alex, first off, thank you so much for joining me and Kelsey today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's always an honor to be one of the inaugural guests on a new venture.
Yep. And me and Alex have talked on my other podcast, the Sign Rip podcast. So, but at that time, I had no idea how to do video recording. But now I do.
I came along. It was like, no, we're gonna do video.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I actually, in preparation for this interview, I went back and gave that a vanity listen, and I was just kind of laughing to myself because so much has changed for you guys and for us on our end, and I think it's been about a year now since then. So,
well, I just wanted. Oh,
you were actually the last interview of 2020 for me on Sign Rip Podcast. So.
Good old 2020.
That's not something I want to remember. The only thing I liked about 2020, by the way, it gave me Invictus. And
yeah. Well, I just also want to do a disclaimer. So this is not going to be like your podcast. It's going to be more of like, just a good old like, sit down, have a cup of coffee, and like talk. Let's talk wrestling. Like, let's,
round table, right?
Is to like, get stories and like. What drove you to want to do something. That's the thing. Like, I know when I meet wrestling fans, it's like you all start from somewhere. It's either you had a family member or a friend, like someone got you into loving it. And it's like you get bit by the bug and it's like you either love it, and you're a diehard, or you just hate it. I've never really like met someone really in between where like they go, yeah, I'll watch it here and there. It's either you're a diehard or you're not. Definitely. So that's what I want our viewers. I hope, when we build up our little ladder of viewers that they, can get a good laugh or get a good like, oh, cool. That was a cool story. And like, yeah.
For sure. Well, I'm an open book. So. Yeah,
well, how was everyone's day?
You want to know?
My day is great. I worked today. That's I worked at my job that I guess I've been. Because that's life.
Hairdresser life. I had bleach all over me. It was great.
I don't know anybody who's ever said life was great for having bleach on them, but
it was a joke.
Yeah, I mean you're clean, no bacteria, right?
Facts. Maybe that's why I haven't gotten bit by the COVID bug for 2 years. Maybe that's why. Maybe because I work with chemicals that it just stayed away from me for so long.
Alex, what was your first wrestling memory?
Oof. My earliest wrestling memory. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. I remember the pay-per-view where I picked up watching wrestling for the first time. It was Backlash 2002. And the only reason I remember that is because that was when Big Show beat the ever-loving crap out of Rey Mysterio. And
I was waiting for Triple H.
Yeah. Well, no, I was.
Well, they know that they were feuding at that time.
Yeah, no, I remember watching it and just being appalled because being a little kid and watching this like little guy just get the snot kicked out of him by this giant was just it just sort of seared into my brain a little bit. That was the one when they put him on the stretcher and they strapped him to the stretcher, and then Big Show just picked up the stretcher with him on it
I
and just
remember that.
yeah, and just swung the whole thing, like the stretcher and Ray, just like a
Just
bat
tossed him.
into the thing. Yeah. And I was just like, I was simultaneously just horrified, but also fascinated by it. Um, and then I kind of picked up watching it from there. So it was sort of an interesting time to get into it because early 2000s was when the Attitude Era was winding down, and then the Ruthless Aggression era was picking
It
up.
was
So,
kind of like
yeah,
crossing
so like
over.
Rock and Stone Cold were on their way out. Cena, Orton, Lesnar,
They were just
those guys were coming up. Like, so it was a definitely a very interesting time to become a fan.
That's ironically when I started for a while. That was when I took like a 4-year break from watching wrestling for a while.
well,
Unfortunately,
then that's funny because that's when I started watching as
Oh,
a
wow.
fan. Like, so that's funny. Me and Alex kind of picked up where you were just like, all right, I'm kind of over it. Like, and we picked up as like, you know, newcomers, like, oh, what is this?
Those breaks, like between the different eras, are where that happens. It's where a lot of the older fans, fall off because they don't like the direction where it's going. But it also, serves as sort of like an access point for a lot of new.
Well, it like opens the door back up to newer fans. And then like, you know, if you're old and you're like, all right, I'm over it, they, you know, you can walk out and then the newer ones come in. It's like a revolving door for fans.
My reasons actually was because I got in trouble with my parents and I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling anymore. To be fair, it was towards the end of the invasion angle, and I got caught wrestling a pillow. I did a rock bottom to a pillow in the bedroom because I was doing like wrestling moves to my brother, and they got mad at it. They said no more of that, and I started doing it to like pillows, and then I guess it caused dust, and
I would rather, I mean, if I was a parent, I would rather it be with a pillow, right? Like at least you can't hurt a pillow. I don't know.
No.
I mean, we watched Cobra Kai not that long ago. My daughter, who's only a year, was like kicking her baby. That's so bad, but funny because like she's kicking and didn't know, like she's like watching and she's just like, and I was like, ooh, maybe you'll be in a karate.
But so Alex, a lot has changed since I had you on the Sign Rip podcast, obviously. Which when I had you on the Sign Rip podcast, Invictus was already 2 shows in, 2 shows separated from the infamous one on the farm, which I was at, and then there was unfortunately I didn't get to make the other show. I keep forgetting the name of that one because
November Rain, but
November
Rain was spelled like REIGN, and I thought we were being all clever with that. And then this past November, there were at least 3 other shows I saw called November Rain with the same spelling. So,
oh, it's like womp womp.
It is what it is. But Invictus had an amazing year in 2021. I'm predicting. Not predicting. I know. I could have sworn at least 5 shows in 2021, right?
Yeah. I mean, Kelsey can check the back of her shirt, but
Your check mark checklist.
November Rain, but yeah, and then you had Overdrive in there as well, which isn't on the shirt, but yeah.
I think that was after the shirt was made. So
yeah, that was the 1 year anniversary shirt, which was.
Now, did you ever think that like this little company that you were like maybe dreaming of one day was going to become like a huge reality? And like now that it is a reality, did you think it would pick up as fast as like it's going?
No, honestly, again, this just existed as, kind of like a fantasy of mine for many years, going back to when I was a kid. I always joke around and say like I had zero athletic ability whatsoever as a kid, And I was kind of cognizant of that. So I sort of realized that I was never going to actually be a wrestler myself, but I was always very interested in like the storyline side of it, the creative side. You know, I used to love making up stories as a kid. I still do like making up stories. Um, so I was more interested in like the characters and the booking side of things. So I knew that if I was ever going to get involved in the business, it was going to be on that end. Um, but as far as, you know, actually making it happen, obviously that was a very long and strange journey. But you know, when COVID hit, I mean, obviously I had been planning to get Invictus started since before COVID was a thing, but COVID threw a wrench in things. And I mean, when the rest of the world was shutting down, it kind of, I saw it as an opportunity. It was almost like a blank slate. You know, there was barely any wrestling companies were running at that time. So when we announced that we were having that first show down on the farm, I think a reason why that first show was as successful as it was because people were so starved, not just for wrestling, but for any kind of entertainment, like anything to do. They've been
Well,
cooped
it
up.
was like human interaction. Like
Yeah.
you just wanted to know that the world was still like there. You weren't
Yeah.
just confined to your four walls and a TV.
Yeah, no, of
I
course.
didn't get to
And
say this on the Sign Rip podcast, but you don't realize how much that show, along with the Test of Strength show I was at that weekend, meant to me and to Billy. And I'm pretty sure had Kelsey not been a week post birth of her daughter, she probably would have joined us for that show.
Hell yeah.
But
you get a pass on that one. That's
but that week, I mean, that weekend was so special to me, to Billy, to me and Billy, because he was like the only one that went with me to both shows. I don't count the other guy because we don't talk with him, but he it is what it is. But he you don't know how much that weekend meant to me, to Billy, to, you know, just take the drive all the way to Jersey to that farm. And it sounds ridiculous on like paper, in theory, but like just
But I
for
don't
like
think that sounds ridiculous. I feel like, as he said before, like it was like almost like a blank slate. Like there was no other competition in the sense of like, you didn't have to worry that AEW was going to roll through at the time or WWE. Like you guys were like, oh shit, all right, the world's shut down, but things are slowly opening back up. As long as we stay within a distance in an open area, we could do this. Like you had a plausible opportunity to be like, we could do this, you know? And now you have a diehard fan base. Like you have those two, the special needs guys that I always see who I love. Like you have like an actual fan base that will follow. And I think that that's remarkable. Like you guys, like people that saw 2020 and the shutdown either took it as a business opportunity or they did nothing. You guys were like, well, I already had the business opportunity. I was already starting this. So let's just roll with it. Like,
yeah. I didn't
think,
want to wait. I was
it's
so
like
frustrated, you know.
that's like, you know, on Christmas morning, you're seeing a bunch of presents, but you're told you got to wait till later. Like, no, like you had everything set up and ready to go. Like, I'm really glad to know that 2020 wasn't like a damper on like your plans to starting this journey because we wouldn't have you guys, or maybe we would have. Who knows? But I'm glad I think it was meant to be when it was meant to be.
And as I said, you know, it was a bright spot in like a entirely crappy year for us. You know,
well, Joe, you had to work through the whole pandemic while most of us were, you know, sitting at home.
Yeah.
This poor guy was working 7 days straight, like here and there. And I felt so bad for him. I was like, holy crap, like you're one of the essential workers. Because no offense to a lot of people, like food doesn't stop. You need to eat. So when you work in the grocery store, like you're feeding everybody that's home.
Yeah.
Like I'm a hairdresser. Like I have a neighbor who is like, oh, we're essential. We're not. We're not. We make you feel good in the moment. That's it. That's all I'm there for. Like I am not saving lives. I'm not putting food in your stomach. I unfortunately, but fortunately got to be home pregnant. So I really just sat at home and watched a bunch of Netflix and Hulu. But other than that, like, but I did make some really cool friends via the internet with wrestling and stuff like that. Like wrestling didn't stop on my end. Like I watched probably every Royal Rumble I could. I watched every almost pay-per-view I could because I had nothing better to do. And then to hear like Joe was like, yeah, I'm going to Test of Strength and Invictus. I was like, wait, you're not going to NEW? Like I had no idea that there was others out there. And he was like, no, they're new. Like, you got to come next time, when you're able to come, you got to come. And then that first show, I was just telling Even Stevens, they walked out and I never had like my tag team. Like, as you can see behind him, he has his tag team. He's got Insanely Rude and the Stepdads. I didn't have mine. I was like, oh, okay. Like, but then they walk out and instantly I was like, these are my boys. Like,
well, that's not the entirely full story for the record. First off, she was thinking the Insanely Rude were going to be at that show at the beginning. We were hoping, praying, crossing our fingers. Unfortunately, I guess at the time.
Which show? Which was
the In Bloom.
Okay.
It was done in April?
Yeah, that was in Bloom.
Okay.
It happens, unfortunately. I guess people weren't available at the time, but whatever. So I was like, all right, well, Insanely Rude's not going to be there. So I still think you should go, because I was telling her that, like, Dennis Morgan, who's local around us.
Turns out he actually grew up with my cousins and my brother-in-law. So that was kind of cool.
Dennis knows everyone. I'm not surprised.
Well, and now we've kind of developed a friendship, which is cool. Like, I went into your wrestling not knowing a single person in there, except for Jared, but he's like,
And Wrecking Ball.
Well, yeah, but like 2 out of like all the other people, I was like, all right, like, this is going to be weird. Like, I feel like, it's new to me. I was like, am I going to like anybody? Is anyone going to like, stand out for me? And
I loved Gio from the minute I met him at the first Invictus show too.
Right.
And I just want to get back to that real quick before we get back to In Bloom. Like, because obviously, and this is something I tell everybody, we came originally, our drawing factor to go to that show was Verna from NEW. Wrecking Ball was an added bonus. But me and Billy fell in love with Gio, at that show because of how nice he was, how awesome he was, and
he is definitely a personable guy.
He came and chatted with us right after the show was over. And I actually felt bad when we started chatting because I said, yeah, we came from Verna. And I felt terrible because he looked a little surprised when I said that at the moment. I was like, no, I love Gio because he was so nice. And I felt terrible at that moment. I was just.
No, dude, don't feel terrible, because that's the thing, right? That's the beauty of indie wrestling. You go to a show because one or two people, but you leave with
knowing all of them,
a handful of new.
Well, that was like when we went to Creative Pro. Like, we only knew the Even Stevens. We ended up seeing and Ryan and favorite announcer, by the way. We ended up seeing like a bunch of, we got lettuce thrown at us by this vegan dude. And it's like, they left memorable stamps with each match. They did an office something.
I knew CPA from in first Invictus show.
Well,
that was Nick Stapp, Joey.
Oh yeah.
So Nick Stapp lives in Mexico now. He plays guitar at an orphanage.
Ran away.
Is an entirely
speaking of like people from Invictus and all these other places, we went to AEW because I had tickets for like 2020s. That thing, they got moved over for like a year. Yeah. And we go and like, they do like the beginning shows or whatever. And he goes, oh my God, that's so-and-so from Invictus. That's so-and-so from NEW. It's like, these guys might be nobodies to like, just diehard AEW or WWE fans, but to us, they're like, holy shit, it's awesome to see them on the big stage. Like, that's why when you go to these indie shows, we might not, like you just said, you might only know like 2 people. But then you walk out and then you can go to some other event and be like, holy crap, I know that guy. Like, it's just, it's the beauty of indie wrestling.
That's why
anyone can pop up anywhere.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alex. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. I'm just saying, like, that's the appeal. Anyone can pop up anywhere. That's the beauty.
And I got excited because when we went to AEW, I get them all mixed up all the time sometimes. I started spotting people on Dark. I saw Ray Jazz. I'm like, I know him from Invictus. Yep. And then I saw Kaya McKenna. I was like, oh my God, she was on that same show. And then, and then Verna, of course. I really popped hard for Verna. Unfortunately, he took on Orange Cassidy. So, but as like I said, as I was saying, how special it was, and Kelsey got hooked on the Even Stevens from Invictus.
I love that. Please book them forever. promoting my boys.
I got hooked on Gio from that show, and that relationship is that's been such a bond all the way to NEW, to the point where I literally, I was at the show at the NEW arena when he won the Northeast Wrestling Arena, when he won the Battle Royal, and that's why I recently posted that photo on my Instagram on how special that was when he won that battle royal, because I literally sat there. I said, from the farm all the way to the NEW arena, and I didn't, and it was an extra for me and Billy when he rolled out the ring and came over and hugged me and Billy,
Yeah.
Like the 36-year-old kid inside, the 9-year-old kid inside me got excited again over that. That was really.
But like, Alex, when you hear stuff like that, when you hear fans be like, holy crap, like I really like this wrestler that you, and I'm not saying you and yourself like discovered, but you bring them in all the time. Like when you hear like fans be like, holy crap, I really like that person. What does it feel like inside of you as a promoter, as like an owner of a business, be like, huh?
It tells me I'm doing something right. It tells me that it's extremely validating, and it makes me just very appreciative. I mean, like I said, the fans, you guys are our lifeblood. It's the wrestlers who are in there, putting their bodies on the line, but without an audience, without the fans coming in and supporting, we would be nothing. So
Spider! I'm sorry. There's a spider crawling in my leg. No, like I just jumped because there was a spider crawling in my leg. I'm so sorry.
Let it bite you. You can become Spider-Man. Yeah, you could join the multiverse.
Jealous though, then.
Now, minus the spider. So, what does it feel as a promoter too to see your guys, whether you discovered them or not, go on to the bigger shows like NEW or AEW or even WWE's like pre-shows? Like, does that feel like pretty cool? Like knowing like, oh, they're moving on up.
No, it's a fantastic feeling. I mean, every time I look forward to like when they announce the matches for Dark every week, because I look forward to like
hearing your guys.
Yeah, seeing who's booked and seeing if it's anyone that I know or anyone that I have booked in the past, because that like I said, it's very validating for me to know that Tony Khan or whoever it is who's booking Dark, sees the same potential in them that I do. That lets me know. I mean, because you have to think, when you book a wrestling show, everything is a calculated risk, right? You have, you could think something through and you can think it's a good idea in your head, but at the end of the day, it's really the audience that determines if it's successful. It's really up to you guys and how you're going to receive it. So to get that sort of external, like I said, validation of, okay, yeah, like it's not just me who sees this in them. The audience agrees, other promoters agree. It's a really awesome feeling. And like I said, it's one of the many pleasures of being involved in indie wrestling, is seeing the progression of these guys from, training and just showing up at these spot shows in front of like 15, 20 people to going to the big leagues, whatever you define as a big league, right?
Now, as I'm going to requote you, you say the risk. So in the Osming show, you were saying how people, if you take risks, you plan things, and sometimes things go accordingly. We saw Danger Hawk completely break his arm. And the weird thing was,
brutal.
That was when Jared was coming in. And I thought at first, he hit, what was it? He landed. And all of a sudden my friend goes, he broke his arm. And I said, no way. And then he goes, no, you heard it. And I was like, there's no way you heard that. And then when he was going like this, I thought it was all staged because, he just had Jared come in as his manager. And I was like, oh, this is staged. And then you kind of like beelines it back. And I was like, this might actually be serious. And then I remember I texted Jared like a half hour later. And I was like, dude, is everything okay? Like, and then to hear like, things didn't go as planned and blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh crap. Like we saw like a person legit like break his arm in front of us. And that must have been devastating for you to see one of your guys like, go out there thinking they're going to do their normal thing. And then all of a sudden just be injured like that.
Yeah.
And that.
Yeah, that was the first real major injury that we had at a show. I mean, people would get, some bumps and bruises here and there, but that was the first actual, like, severe injury that we had at a show. I was, like you guys, I was really hoping that he was selling it, and that it was an injury. But when Chris, the ref, put up the X signal. That's when I knew it was real. So I called for the bell, and even Ryan, I don't know if you might have seen like maybe on the replay or something, but
he was like,
oh, no, never mind. We cut that match from the video.
I was kind of upset over that.
Yeah,
like,
no, we cut it.
It was the way it was filmed, the angle you would have seen it. Because where we were sitting, I couldn't see until he got up and was like literally just holding his arm, like holding it in place. And then he saw the pictures, and he sent me private photos of his arm, the break, and it was literally like like
it was a
clean break though.
Yeah, it was a double compound fracture, so it was like not just there's two arms in the bone at that. There's two
it was one.
It was both of them. Yeah. So yeah, I mean Ryan looked at me. He's like, "What's the deal?" And I said, "Winner, referee stoppage, max 0, go." And at that point, I ran over. Dennis, I remember, just looks up at me and he's like, "Yep." He's like, "It's broken." All right. And he literally holds it up and it's just from here down, it's just dangling.
Oh,
I was so like, they tell you to remain calm no matter what, like when you're the promoter. And that was, as you guys know, not a very big venue. So I swore so loudly when that happened. I was like, oh, there's kids here. But we got them out of the room. And the only saving grace of that is because that show was in New York, by law, we had to have medical personnel on site. And at the time I was grumbling. I said, we've never had anyone get hurt before. I said, I have to pay extra money to have these medical personnel on, blah, blah, blah.
But now it's kind of like, oh,
I was like, this is
thank God.
definitely the right thing.
Well, when they said they were bringing him to Westchester Medical, I was kind of shocked because Phelps is right up the road in Ossining. It's like 10 minutes.
He had to go to a trauma center.
Yeah, I was like, I'm like, what the heck? He just broke his arm. But I didn't realize like the severity of the freak. And so I saw pictures of it. I was like, ew. Because my neighbor, who is, again, a wrestling fan, short story, we were playing Can Jam. My cousin went to throw the Frisbee. He got him in the groin. But when he twisted, it had just rained that day. Oh. He twisted, his kneecap went from like where it's normally to like the whole other side. And when your adrenaline kicks in, like, I just looked at him. I was like, look at me. Do not look down. Look straight at me. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually a funny story before the show happened. And I'm glad that Dennis is okay now. But me and Billy were actually hanging out. So we got there really early. I don't know if you.
Billy wasn't at that show.
What?
Billy wasn't at the show. It was Swicky and.
No, me and Billy got there early because it was in Ossining. We drove down there way early.
The first one really wasn't at that show.
He was at that show. And Ryan did a birthday shout out for him that show. But what happened was when we got down there early, me and Billy were just kind of hanging out in the car. Dennis kind of snuck up on us as, we were chatting for a good 10 minutes about how close the show was now because he was so happy because it was finally a show that was so close for once, And Billy's like, I can't wait to see some bone-breaking action today.
Oh.
I swear to God.
Well, these had happened in his home state, like not that far from his home, and like.
Yeah, the other good thing too was
home, and I'm like, you just had to say that tonight, didn't you?
And then, poor Steven Azor, he broke his jaw like up in like Maine. So I mean, imagine like being states away and having to go to like a crappy hospital with limited to no care. And some things are just, they happen for a reason, and in a good way. It happened close to home, and his loved ones were around. But I felt bad, like all his friends like showed up like after his match, because like I've gone to high school with a lot of them, and I'm like, oh, do they not know? Like,
I mean they hung out and they watched and they ended up having a good time. But yeah, I felt really bad. He was looking forward to that match against Max Zero. But fortunately Dennis, has the pain tolerance of an ox. The paramedic said, I don't know how you're not screaming in pain right now, as she was tending to him. And
he had a good sense of humor on it on Twitter, because he captioned his X-ray photo, Alexa, please play Broken Wings.
Yeah.
But I think you have to have a good sense of humor when anything like that happens. Like, if you're a Debbie Downer, everyone around you is going to be a Debbie Downer. If you have a good attitude, people around you will have a good attitude, and you'll be easier to work with. Like, no medical staff wants to deal with a screaming maniac. Me, for instance, who had a kidney stone, pregnant, and I was yelling at them because I was in so much pain. They couldn't find a vein. So I'm just speaking from experience. Rather deal with you happy and weird than angry and annoying.
Yeah, it doubly sucked for me too, because if you remember, we started late that show too. So I'm
Yeah,
finally thinking like, all right, doors are open, like the ring's all set up. I'm like, it's gonna be smooth sailing from here, and then
and then
30 seconds into the first match, yeah, we get hit
I
with
will
that.
say, as much as we were packed like little sardines, it was so cool. Like to be like as close as I am to my computer, to be that close to the ring, like that's a fangirl's dream,
Oh
is to be
yeah,
able to reach out and touch the ring. And now that we'll be working the show in 2 weeks, it's like, or in a week, it's like, holy crap, like I get to touch everything. And that's the nerd in me going, oh my God, I get to touch the ring. I get to do this. Like it's most fans' dream is to be up that close to a ring.
And I gotta say right now, I really appreciate the opportunity that you're
Hell
giving
yeah.
me to
I was like, I'm going to work a wrestling show. And my boss looks at me and goes, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to, help out with the show. And I'm, going to learn the ropes, literally speaking. And he goes, that's so cool. Like,
that's my way of paying it forward, because I told the story when I was on Joe's podcast the first time of how I first broke in with Evolve Wrestling. It was the same. I was, just a 20-something-year-old kid at the time, and I wasn't like most of the other people who go to work at the shows. They're trained as wrestlers or are training to be wrestlers, and they're going to try to get an opportunity. For me, I wasn't trained. I had no, skills to bring to the table. I just, I said, I'm a hard worker and I just want to, get my foot in the door. So that was what it was. And that was my first,
as a fan, that is discouraging, because it's like not what you did, but I'm saying when you're told like, oh, you got to either like go to school for that, or like
yeah,
either be the wrestler, or then if that doesn't work out, be the rep. If that doesn't work out, all right, you get to like, set up the ring or whatever. And it's like, or, you kind of, to get your foot in the door, you either set up the ring and then you go from there. And it's like, oh, well, I already went to school. I already have a career. I just kind of want to like, just
learn the ropes.
that, or, I just love wrestling. I remember when I worked at GameStop way back in the day, I used to say, I'm going to own a video game store, but now it's like everything's digital. But before that, you didn't know things were going to become digital. So like, girlhood dream, like I'm going to own an old retro gaming store. So like when you hear like, oh, I want to, one day maybe do a promotion or something. And it's like, oh, well, you got to do this, this, and this, and this. It's like, you kind of take a step back and go, all right, I'm just going to stick to what I'm doing. So when you were like, when Joe came up to me, I was like, no, we're working that show. I was like, wait, what? Like, that's so effing cool. Like, I don't want to drop
it to see if she wanted to do it too. Cause, and then,
why would I ever say, I'm not like a girly girl in the sense of like, I'm not afraid to get dirty. I'm not afraid to touch a worm. I'm not afraid to like
get an answer out of you.
To be fair, I have a kid, and I like, if I ever check my phone, it's like literally like I go like this. Oh, okay. And then I don't care.
But
I have to tell my friends not to over text me.
That's an amazing opportunity we're gonna get on.
And that's a 1 in a million chance. Like, you can't say no.
That's my way of paying it forward. Gabe and Trevin and the guys at Evolve, they didn't have to do what they did for me, but they did, and look what it's led to. So this is my way of paying it forward. And the way I see it, if you're willing to work hard and you're and you're passionate and you want to learn, you have a place. So
that means the world to me. Going back to that Ossining show, and I didn't really get to say what I wanted to say. I was really happy about that show. That I think is still a personal favorite show of mine.
Same.
That I feel like doesn't get enough love, in my opinion. But I felt like that was a personal favorite show of mine for many reasons. Obviously, one big reason, obviously behind me, but for many reasons. Because first off, that's literally the closest I've ever had to drive for a show, and it was so nice for once.
Yeah.
I understand taking the drive for shows, but that meant so much to me because I'm not gonna lie, I have like the crappiest car in the world right now.
It's not that bad. It's just old.
So I kind of like throw gas money at people to go down to shows with a better car. That's why that show was so easy to get to. Because it was like right. I jokingly have told Billy
I could have walked there on
she lives 9 minutes. I live
yeah,
20
it was
minutes,
like nothing. It would have been like a half an hour, 45-minute walk.
And I think it was just a double bonus for me to know that like my favorite tag team was wrestling that show.
Yeah.
Although, shut up, Kels. She's like sticking her tongue out. She was a massive Insanely Rude fan before all this, and now she is like, no, I don't like them anymore. She's the biggest sellout in the world.
Well, to be fair, so like, not to cut you off, like every fan that I've ever met of like wrestling was always like a John Cena fan, and then like that's how you start. You find like the biggest face of a company, and that's who you love. And then like when you finally get to find your own in the business, you're like, oh, like now I'm like the biggest Triple H fan, like really bad. But like, so Insanely Rude were like my face tag team, and then I've sprouted my wings, and now I'm a Even Stevens fan.
You're, Insanely Rude haven't been on their best behavior lately. So
yeah,
you're puts you in a bit of a pickle.
Put me in a pickle.
He's diehard.
So
I love them, but they're just not my favorites.
There's no more section. It's the Insanely Rude one. But going back,
You're the only fan they like.
When they were still on their best behavior, it was it still made the show so special for me, and the entire Insanely Rude section because we'd been going all over to NEW to see them, and just see them pop up in our hometown made it so much more special.
Yeah, that was cool.
It wasn't so special for Jason Andrews and AK Willis, unfortunately, but
listen, I
felt so bad for him too because I love Jason. And then, Insanely Rude comes around, and I'm just like, I'm going to be so biased. This is so sad.
Wait, so, Alex, how did you find Jason? Since he doesn't live within the Tri-State, like, how did he just come about? Like, how did you grab him? Because I love him.
For the record, I thought he lived in, I thought he was one of the guys from Team 3D, too. So, at the beginning. Now I know.
He's actually probably one of the farthest as far as where he comes from. I met him through Dennis. Dennis.
Interesting.
Dennis worked a Royal Rumble type match for a company in New Jersey called Titan Championship Wrestling. And in that Rumble match, because it was funny, Dennis is telling me about the Rumble match, and he says, yeah, he's like, so when you're in the locker room before a Rumble match and you're putting it together, he's like, it's kind of like showing up to a party where you don't know anyone. He's like, so you just find your 2 or 3 guys and you just sort of gravitate towards them, and we're like, all right, like we're just gonna kind of stick together for the match, especially because this was like this match had like a ludicrous number of people in it. There were like 40 people in it. Like, so he's like, yeah,
barbecue,
he's like, yeah, he's like, so I just, yeah, he's like, I didn't know anyone there. He's like, so I just like showed up. I found my, my small group of guys. He's like, and we just kind of stuck together for the match. And that group was Dennis, Jason Andrews, and Big Trouble Ben Bishop. So I just scooped them because Titan, for whatever reason, didn't bring those guys back.
Well, so how did you meet Dennis Morgan? Where are you from?
Okay, so I'm from Rockland County.
Okay.
That's where Ari is, Kels.
Yeah. I went to high school at Geo. I don't know if
I didn't know that's.
I think that was mentioned once or twice.
Yeah, Geo's a buddy of mine from high school. We actually used to backyard together when we were in high school.
What?
Yeah. There's still video of it on YouTube somewhere. Geo is unrecognizable. He is the scrawniest, like tiniest, lankiest kid.
Really?
Yeah. I found a video of him when he was younger playing soccer, and it just blew me away. And the funniest thing about it underneath was I saw MCM post a comment underneath on the video saying, he's like, who is this nerd playing soccer on the
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, MCM is actually not. I grew up. He went to Yorktown, or he lives in Yorktown. I grew up in Cortland, so he went to high school with my cousin. So that's it's like weird. Like, but how did you guys get in touch with like people from our area?
I'll give you the story of like the little tree branching out of how it went. So like
I really want to hear this.
So like I said, Gio originally didn't want to be a wrestler. Gio wanted to be a soccer player.
Right.
Obviously, that's not part of the gimmick. That's the truth. He went to Europe for a while. He lived in Milan for a little bit, and he was playing soccer. Didn't pan out. Not because he's not talented. He's an incredible soccer player, and he definitely could have gone pro. But there's a lot of BS when it comes to like the politics over there, as far as like having agents. It's kind of the same as anything. So it didn't pan out. He came back here. He and I, after he had returned from Europe, we went to NEW Rumble in Rockland together as fans. He hadn't started training yet to be a wrestler. And at that show, he started talking to Donovan Dijak, now in WWE. But he was wrestling at that show, and he talked to him at his merch table, and he said, he's like, I'm entertaining the idea of possibly training to be a wrestler. He's like, are there any schools in the area that you might recommend? He said, well, you can't go wrong with Team 3D Academy up in Danbury. So he went and enrolled in there and started training. And then his cohort, I guess, at the Team 3D Academy, in other words, the guys who started together and then eventually graduated together, was him, MCM, Dennis, and Clipper, as the four of them. Now, meanwhile, while they were training, because what happens is, right, with once wrestlers are trained, right, they go out onto the independent circuit. They take bookings and stuff, but sometimes the wrestlers will change their schools, right, that they train at. The good wrestlers, right, will go to training consistently even after they've like graduated. They go to continue practicing, continue to improve, and they'll have a school that they go back to for that. So around that time when they were training, Wrecking Ball came and joined 3D. Again, he was already trained to be a wrestler. He was wrestling on NEW and other places, but he wanted a place where he could go that was local to him and practice on a regular basis. So he came in, joined them. But like I said, I already knew Wrecking Ball because I was going to NEW as a fan. So that was kind of cool for me to, have seen this big, larger than life guy and then actually get the chance to work with him. Beyond that, so that was pretty much, like I said, when I was first breaking in, I didn't know anyone. I knew that was going to be like my core group of guys, people that I knew from Geo. But then the rest of it was all just networking through there and Evolve. At Evolve, while doing Ring Crew, that was how I met Leroy. Was through doing Ring Crew for Evolve. I remember one time I set up a ring. It was just me, Leroy, and Joe. You remember Bones? Yeah. So it was literally. Yeah. It was literally just me, Leroy, and Bones. Just the three of us set up a whole ring together. Evolved while there was an Adam Cole was giving a seminar. So he was doing like the sit down part of the seminar where he just kind of sits and like talks pretty much. And like, so he's sitting there talking to a bunch of wrestlers. It's literally just Leroy, Bones, and myself just like hauling all this ring equipment behind him and putting it up. We're kind of like, like leaning over and listening a little bit. Like,
that's cool.
Yeah. And that show was crazy because I actually, so if you want to imagine this, I watched that show later on that night, sitting on the stage of this church gym in Brooklyn. We're sitting crisscross applesauce up on the stage, but it's me. Adam Cole is sitting on this side of me, and Tommaso Ciampa is sitting on this side of me. So the three of us just sat and watched this entire show together, crisscross applesauce, sitting together on this stage.
Were you kind of in awe, like, oh my God, that's Adam Cole? Like,
no, I mean, honestly, Well, at first, of course, but once I get to talking to him a little bit, I'm like,
You like realize, oh, he's a human being. Like,
he's not only is he a human being, he's a wrestling fan at the end of the day. But it's interesting to see like what, like these guys are obviously some of the best and the best of the best. So it's interesting to see like what pops them, you know what I mean? Like when
yeah,
they're watching wrestling, like the stuff that makes them react is like, that like they're doing, whoever's in the ring is doing something right if they get a reaction from these guys. So that was like a really cool bit of perspective for me. Matt Sydal was there too, actually. It was a who's who, but that was interesting because that was actually when Ciampa was out with his neck injury, and it was interesting because Cole was the one who was advertised for the seminar, so everyone was there to get a chance to work with Cole. Ciampa just showed up because that dude loves wrestling and eats, sleeps, and breathes wrestling. So he literally just came just to help out and give advice to the wrestlers who were there and just to watch the show. So that was really awesome. But yeah, I'm going off on a way tangent here. But yeah, so
no, like that's so freaking
Well,
cool.
man,
Like,
I love the
that's how I
story.
met. Yeah, that's how I met Leroy. And Leroy, that was the first time I saw him wrestle too, was in Evolve. And I saw it was funny because I was talking to him before the show, and he was explaining his gimmick to me. He's like, yeah, he's like, so my gimmick is that I'm a gamer. And I'm like, oh, cool. I was like, so you do like moves. Yeah. I was like, so you do moves like named after video games and stuff. And he's like, kind of. He's like, I take it a step further. He's like, you'll see what I mean. Like, and then I get into the ring and I'm like, oh, he actually literally plays the Switch while he was wrestling.
but now you met all of them, but how did you meet like the other guys that you had? Like
Give
even
me a name.
Stevens
Give me
or
a name and I'll tell you how I met them.
All right.
even
Well, I'm
Stevens Phil Cardigan.
Okay, so those guys were through CPA. CPA, Nick, he went to, so similar to how I knew Gio from high school, Ryan Gross, who's our director of marketing, the merch guy, he went to high school with CPA. So that was how we got him. And then we had a tag team opening on the first show. So I messaged him and said, hey, do you have any tag teams that you'd like to recommend? He's like, yeah. He's like, I got this tag team that I train with at Creative Pro, Steven Stevens. And then obviously when the whole thing happened with Azure getting his jaw broken, then I was like, I mean, the story. You guys talked about it. But I offered to Somerset because I felt bad. I said, if he wanted to come in with a new partner. So that was how Cardigan came into the equation.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. It is 95% networking, I would say, and just who knows who, and getting introduced to people that way and stuff.
Now,
once you gain a little bit of momentum and credibility as a company, then the wrestlers start coming to you. So especially this time of year, it's the beginning of the year, and people are trying to fill up their calendars, especially because we just posted our schedule. My inbox is overflowing at this point, and I'm not even saying that to be like,
no, but that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that to be like, oh, look at me, like I'm all important and stuff. I'm saying like it is stressful.
now I this is obviously I think I might have an idea on this one. Like, how'd you get in touch with Insanely Rude? And please don't tell me it's because I was driving you guys nuts on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram.
Probably was.
No, no, I mean, they were one of those ones where I was like, I knew who they were through NEW beforehand, but then obviously, when Twitter started taking off and you guys were saying, oh, like if you brought in Insanely Rude, that would be great. I'm like, all right, well, now we definitely have to give him a look. Because at that point too, we were trying to look for more tag teams. So I was like, well, we got to give him a look. I remember now actually why they weren't in Bloom. RJ was in Florida, but I did hit them up for that show. Yeah, they were my first choice to go against Sweater Weather, because even though at that point,
that would have been so cool.
Well,
but Kelsey,
point,
if they went to that show, you wouldn't even have cheered on Sweater Weather. You would have been going for Insanely Rude because you were saying up to that show it was Insanely Rude. So it might have been a blessing for you in a way.
See?
And I love Insanely Rude. So this is me who loves Insanely Rude to death. It's a blessing for her. So, and I didn't know much about the Even Stevens myself, actually, Alex, until Invictus. I didn't even know they existed.
They weren't prior to that, they weren't, because they just graduated training that year at Creative Pro. So they hadn't really branched out at all much by that point. They were really only going places. Azure broke his jaw at Limitless in Maine, and they were there because they rode up with CPA.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
It's just crazy. Like, I don't know, like all these cool guys, like to me, they're famous.
Yeah. I mean, they appreciate it.
They mean a lot to us, these guys on the indie scene. It's crazy how much, and I was saying this not that long ago on Twitter that like I'm not knocking the indie promotions for wanting to bring in a big name from that's been on TV or anything. But like I really do love the guys that I've been like around all these times at like Invictus, Northeast Wrestling, Test of Strength.
Speaking of like the indie guy, I love that little construction guy. Oh my God, hold on. I have his name because I really want to get him on. I want him on our podcast so bad. When you guys did the Royal Rumble and he came in, everyone thought he was just a worker.
Dude, I got so confused.
Puts on a show.
Like outside while we were hanging outside, and he was just wandering around. We thought he worked for the building. No joke.
You found some really good guys that are just entertaining, and I think that's what I, as a fan, miss. Like I miss being able to laugh, but in a good way, not at you because you're just a fool and you're doing like a really bad gimmick, but laugh in the sense of like, oh my God, this is great. Like he's a great wrestler, but he's funny. And that's again, like I'm bringing up my boys, but that's how I grew to love the Even Stevens because they not only can wrestle, but they are entertaining. And for me, I love to laugh. So like if you're like all macho and serious, I'm like, like, okay, we get it. Like you're big, you're strong, blah. But then you have these just average looking guys. And I don't mean like average, like ugly, but they're not like, John Cena or, they're not pretty boys. They're there because they love this industry just as much as the next fan does. So that's
what, I think that's where we at Invictus strive to be different from other companies. So other companies, what I've noticed is that when they book their shows, they think of what they want to see as wrestling people. You know what I mean? So they think like, I want the best like technical wrestlers in the ring. I want the, best guys. And it's like, like you should include that, right? You should include like, people that can go 15, 20 minutes and have like, really technical, like high work rate matches. But if you only have that, you're pushing out a big part of your audience, your potential audience, because what I always say is, you can't forget the people who, either the casual fans or the people that just, you're going there to be entertained at the end of the day. You're not there to, sit there like some freaking like opera goer with your little spectacles and like pick apart everything, like, and criticize everything that you're there to see. Like, that's just, I know that there's some people who do that and they just seem constantly miserable and bitter all the time. But I think it's important,
Well, I think those are the people that just wish they could look like that and like.
Yeah, like.
See,
it's important that you don't lose sight of that.
Shows with that mindset. That's the thing. Like, they try to pick everything apart on the show. Just be like, dude, just go to enjoy the show. Like, that's why, like, when I'm there, like, that's why I bring the signs. I cheer. I scream. I boo. I try to come up with creative ways to, like,
Oh my God, a Creative Pro, he was like, we started the Even Stevens chant. Like, he gets them chanting, people chanting. And I think that
funny
that's the beauty of
about that show, Creative Pro. There's a hilarious part. CPA was taking on I'm trying to think his name, Slade from Creative Pro.
Slade is terrifying.
Yeah, he is.
Is that like really short guy, but he was bald and he's like,
yes. He was that guy who took on.
He reminds me of who were you just saying that was with Adam Cole?
Yeah.
He reminds me of him.
So
like little, but he's like, all right, I don't want to mess with him. Like he might bite my head off.
What I remember about that match, though, and it was crazy. And this is hysterical. I love telling this story. Is CPA comes out. He has no music coming out,
Nothing.
and he just says, "Come up with something if you want." On the way out, I start singing Bon Jovi's "Living on a Prayer" as a joke, to Kelsey. And what starts is me and her singing it. All of a sudden, the rest of the crowd in Creative Pro starts singing it, and I'm just blown away. I'm like.
But I will say, and I hate to drop a big name, but my favorite moment ever will forever be this moment. So a lot of people know Kurt Hawkins, aka his original name. I don't know. I didn't know he was friends with tired. Oh my God, what is his name?
Zack Ryder.
No, well, besides him. Yeah. Oh my God, I have Adam Cole stuck in my head, but it's not him.
Are you going on about how MJF was there in the background?
Yeah, so MJF was there, and my cousin, they have all these graduate posters right where his office is. So I thought at first that's what my cousin was pointing at. He goes, "Oh, there's MJF," and he's pointing, and mind you, the bathroom is right next to his office. And I look, and there's MJF coming out of the bathroom, and I went, Joe. He's like, what? I was like, MJF's right there. He goes, no, MJF just let me off.
Yeah.
He twisted my head like this, and he gave me the finger.
It was the greatest moment of my life. To know that the biggest heel in the world flipped off my best friend. I
thought she was going to tell how she was too shy to ask Brian for an action.
I could not talk to Kurt Hawkins at all. I puddle. I'm a big fan, but when I'm with him, he's my voice. We always made a joke saying if I ever were to meet Triple H, actually meet him, mind you, he did sign my poster, but I was on my friend's shoulders and I reached as far as I could to hand it to him. But it was at a fan appreciation thing in 2010, almost 12 years ago. And I said to him, and I was like, if we ever meet him, you're gonna have to speak. The running joke is I puddle. I can't talk. And so I'm looking at Kurt Hawkins and I'm like, I can't talk to this guy. I was like, Brian, get his attention. He was like, no, do it yourself. And I'm like, no.
I just had to meet her during Moonlight Bowling one night. No, but yeah, she
gets very. And I have a cat that's named now Hunter.
I'll say it, Kelsey. She puddles up. Alex, she gets very shy in these moments. It's
I have an
crazy.
anxiety attack.
You should have seen it when we were at NEW years ago when she met Scott Hall. Scott Hall messed with her so bad to the point where he wouldn't say, hey, yo. He kept saying, hey, so. Hey, what? He messed with her so bad. It was.
What did I get out of it? I danced with Teddy Long. We did the little dance. But no, me, Bubba Ray Dudley, I was in awe. Because that was my favorite tag team, was the Dudley Boys. So to meet him, I was like, and I awkwardly turtled. Was you were my favorite tag team.
You gotta next time you see Gio or Dennis or any of the Team 3D guys, you gotta ask them for some Bubba stories because they have all of them have great Bubba stories from training, and it's funny because they all have an impression of him that they do, and they're all different, but they're all somehow accurate.
That's really funny.
Clipper told me one actually, Alex. On my podcast, which was funny as hell. But so we've had you on for almost an hour now. It's been a pleasure to have you to just sit and talk wrestling and with it, especially chat about Invictus, what you grew up with. Alex, we really appreciate having you on for the second ever episode of the Rising Star podcast. You got some things you want to plug?
Yeah. End of this month on January 29th, we got Winter's Wrath coming up. Our next show, our first live show of 2022. That's going to be at the good old Phil Sheridan building, aka the Knights of Columbus Hall in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey. Tickets are on sale now, and I can give you the link to put in the description whenever this drops. It's going to be great. We got a lot of great matches. We have Casey Navarro of MLW going up against former 205 Live star, formerly known as Ari Sterling, now known as Alex Zane, in a very
Oh,
high-flying spectacle of a main event. We got Social Media Championship, Big Game Leroy defending against Alec Price, the prize, in a dream match that many have been clamoring for.
Including
are my boys gonna be there?
Even Stevens. I mean, you never know who might show up.
I'm gonna be so upset if they're not. I'm just letting you all know
I
that.
mean, you never know. I will say, as of right now, because they got knocked out of the tournament, they are not scheduled to be there. But card is always subject to change, so you never know. But yeah, lots of really great matches coming your way. Very excited. We got the semifinals and the finals of the tag team title tournament. Our first ever Invictus tag team champs will be crowned that night.
That's awesome.
So we got a lot looking forward to. And I mean, that's all assuming we don't get kicked out of the building with the Takeover Sin match that's going to happen, the unsanctioned war that is taking place. Because we got yelled at last time by the building, and that's a shoot.
Yeah.
wow.
We will see what happens with that.
Even though
Yeah.
I was present for that, and that was epic. I'm not gonna lie.
They
Even
are.
though I was a little scared for you guys because I saw everything going all over the place, and I'm like, oh boy. Oh, I was lit.
Okay.
Billy was like, are they gonna get kicked out? I'm like,
There's a group chat going on with myself and some of those gentlemen, and some of the things that they are asking my permission to do for this next match or make what happened in November seem tame by comparison. So it is going to be very interesting.
Ready. So everybody, thank you for watching this episode of the Rising Star Podcast. Kelsey Spreer with me on this. And of course, thank you to Alex and Invictus Pro Wrestling. Check them out January 29th, Winter's Wrath in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey at the Knights of Columbus. It'll be an amazing banger of a show. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rising Star Podcast.
Don't forget to give us a like and a follow.
Make sure to give this a check it out and share it and all that other jazz. Thank you so much.